Thank you very much. I now call upon the second speaker from Israel to continue their case.
This idea of ethics being completely personal is not really like anything we see in our country today, because the idea that I can do whatever I want according to my ethics standards sounds a lot more like anarchy and a lot less like any world order we would like to have. And I'm going to address ethics right at the beginning of my speech before I get to two issues in my speech, which are going to be the idea of alternatives and can we find this information in any other way, and the idea of property laws, which are really a big problem in this case when you use the data. So let's start with this idea of ethics. So we heard a very strange idea from the opposition, that ethics are subjective and not objective. And we say two things. We say, first of all, ethics aren't completely subjective. We have ethical laws. We have ethical codes. That's how countries work. By everyone agreeing it's not okay to steal. Even though some people decide they would like to steal, the country says, we as a whole agree that it is not ethical and you cannot do this. But even so, Matan addressed this in his speech. He said, okay, we have some ethics that are subjective to countries. We're not going to minimize it to ethics of people, but ethics of countries. And then we have ethics that were agreed on by the world, which was the Helsinki Declaration, which everyone agreed on as the ethical code for our world. So really every company, we said, must really abide by these two ethical codes. The objective ethical code, which might not be accepted by every single person in the world, but was accepted by the huge majority, and that's how things work in our world, and also by their own subjective country ethics. So really this idea, and then we have the idea that ethics sustain themselves. And again, we say this sounds a lot like anarchy. Because according to this logic, we should just cancel all laws. Everyone will just get along by themselves. And until we can get deeper analysis about this, we cannot accept this idea. And then we heard, the idea of legitimacy. And we say that really, the opposition want to throw someone in jail and then use their work. And we asked you at the beginning already, how can you accept something if without condoning the producer? Say you punish the producer and yet still accept the product. How can you accept that? We say that really there's a double message here. From one hand, you're throwing the scientists in jail. On the other hand, you're using, and everyone is accepting and praising their work. For example, if a debating team were to cheat, and then you would punish them, but then publish their win and tell everyone else that they did win, then that really wouldn't be punishing them because that win outlives them. And that's what I want to get to right now. No, thank you. Is that really there's two levels here of legitimacy. To the scientists themselves, who even though they are in jail, as Matan said, the fame and the importance, they discovered something. They did something amazing. Even though they're in jail, that fame outlives them. That medicine will be named after them. So that's plenty for them. And then there's a world, no thank you, that cannot allow itself to accept things that were done in a completely unethical way. And I'll reach that more in my point. The next issue we heard is that this information is vital. And Matan very clearly challenged the opposition right at the beginning to tell us why, for example, we do not torture for information, even though the information is very vital. And he gave us the example of the House of Lords in England, which when they had information that these people were terrorists, released them because they said maybe these people were tortured, and we are not willing to sacrifice our humanity for these 7 terrorists. Sure.
But madam, torture is illegal. These unethical, how you call them, practices are right now illegal.
Exactly for the reason you said, because the experiments are illegal, so we're not going to enjoy from them. The same way torture is illegal, so we're not going to enjoy from it. And you really have to prove to us why doing something illegal and then enjoying from it is different than torturing someone and then using that information. And we also heard, and then Matan also challenged, that really we cannot use, for example, why a cop who goes into a house without a warrant and finds information and proves that this guy is a murderer, the guy cannot be arrested because it was illegally obtained. And the last thing, and so now I'm going to move on to my points. And we really saw, we're going to talk about why these people use these methods. Why does anyone really go to use unethical methods in the first place? I'm going to say that it makes sense, that the most sensible thing to say that's because it's quicker, for a few reasons. It's skipping a lot of steps in the way that had you done it ethically and in a conventional way you'd have to go through. And there's 2 types. There's the steps you have to go through for human rights reasons. For example, for there to be consent, for there to be clean utilities, for there to be compensation if something goes wrong, which we have in legitimate scientific research. And then we have scientific standards. There has to be a certain amount of research done before you get to use a pill because something might go wrong. And all these standards are skipped in these unethical gained data for two reasons. First of all, because they don't really care about the human rights of the people they're experimenting on. That's why they're taking them without consent. No, thank you. Without really caring about them. And the scientific data is sometimes fumbled, the scientific standards, because they want to get out there fast, because they're doing something illegal, and no one wants to spend too much time in someone else's house doing something illegal. So they kind of tend to skip over it. They skip stages like testing on cell cultures, or just testing or computer simulations. So really, no thank you. So really we have these methods that while they are cheaper and quicker and easier, there's really no separate form of science. Anything that is found through an ethical, no thank you, with an ethical method, it's not a whole completely different area of science. It's the same science obtained a little bit quicker. And now I'm going to tell you that really the same science can be obtained. We can get the same information through ethical ways. And it might take a little bit faster. It might take a little more time. But the fact is that with the technology today, with the mapping of the human genome, which means that 2 weeks ago in the University of Ohio, the students managed actually to isolate a gene that causes cancer. And the fact that today we have chemicals that simulate our body's reactions to pills. The fact that technology is progressing more and more, no thank you, to get us better results, more accurate results with the minimum testing on people. And again, let us remember that really these tests aren't always like discovering something completely new. Almost all the time, these tests are checking a pill that already happened. And then it's really about shortcuts. So what I just told you today is that there's really no special merit to this scientific data that might save the world. It's really just this unethically gained data is a little more convenient, it's a little bit easier, it's a little more comfortable. And really, and this is all done on the backs of the developing world. No thank you, because we would never do it in our backyard, because in my house, we would never torture someone and never do something without their consent. But somewhere else where they're far and maybe uneducated, no thank you, and maybe they don't matter so much, we seem to not mind that these things are happening. So really, when balancing our morals and ideals and people's lives, and as I'll tell you in a minute, property laws, versus what? The convenience, really. Because that's all it is, the convenience of accessing data. It's clear where the weight should fall, yes.
So if we want to stop these illegal things from happening, why not make a lot harsher penalty so that the risk just isn't worth it?
We definitely will, but we'll also make sure that if the one guy decides the risk is worth it, we will not use that either, because that will legitimize all the rest. So really, we'll do that and we'll go even farther than you will. The last thing I want to talk about is property laws, because bodily integrity in our lives is very highly prioritized. That's why in many democracies, parents cannot physically punish their children. That's why we can throw criminals in jails, but we cannot beat them or abuse their bodies in any way. And because of all rights and property the person has, their body is the basic, and everything else is derivative. It's the base of all the other rights that give us our existence. And really, according to the bodily integrity of the people who are being tested on is greatly abused in these situations. So really, under the status quo, when I take something from someone, it's their body without their consent, then it really belongs to them. And what the opposition are doing is condoning us because by accepting it, it is us. Us taking other people's bodies and abusing their bodies, abusing their bodily integrity for our needs, so we can have better medicines, so we can have better face creams, so we can really have a much better life. The fact that the other people are suffering, that doesn't really seem to matter. So what have we told you today, ladies and gentlemen? We first of all told you ethics, while they are sometimes subjective, they're objective enough and they're important enough that we can set some sort of standard. We told you that legitimacy is very important, and that we can in no way throw someone in jail but then praise them to the whole world. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call upon the second speaker from Romania to continue their case.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Well, what we've pretty much heard from the government today is the fact that we have some atrocities happening in our present society. We have some illegal things happening in the present society. These illegal things and atrocities do have a real benefit and do constitute a real core within worldwide medical issues. And people may take advantage of them and people may benefit of them. However, we should ban them because we consider them unethical by a board of 6 or 7 people, and we consider them unethical, which is also different from region to region, which is what is ethical for me may not be ethical for you, and so on. What we are saying today as the opposition is the fact that, ladies and gentlemen, we do have penalties, and we are punishing these illegal things under the penalty of the already existing laws. So basically, we are dealing with the problem at its very core. We are punishing those rock scientists, we are punishing all those people doing these atrocities, but still we have an utilitarian perspective. And our utilitarian perspective is the way to go because of the fact that we are saving lives. Basically, what I'm going to do throughout my speech is firstly tackle this argument brought into consideration by the government in the moral reason, the legitimacy, minimizing risk, and also the technology. And I will prove to you how the technology is not necessarily 100% efficient, and the real reason is the fact that we still have all these things happening in our present society. And last but not least, I will deal with my own part of the substantive, namely the social judgment, in which I will tell you exactly how we have to send this message to the society, and it is the duty, the right, and it is up to the society to decide what is ethical and what is not ethical. Basically, what we are saying is the fact that, you know, laws, when we are having a law, we are having real reasons and we are having objective reasons. When we are having ethical reasons and ethical things, we cannot have objective reasons and cannot have an objective core, only because of the fact that these things differ 100% and radically from one region to another. And here comes the very first point from the proposition today, namely the moral reason. They are saying that, you know, humanity is superior and humanity is to be taken into account. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, exactly this is the whole point. We are punishing those who are acting against humanity. We are punishing those rock scientists that are doing illegal things. And exactly this is the point, the fact that we do have laws that are dealing directly with these atrocities for not respecting human rights principles, for not informing the human subject of what they are doing, and so on and so forth. So basically, we are punishing these illegalities, we are punishing these atrocities, still preserving the utilitarian perspective and the benefits of all these studies. Don't you agree with me, madam?
Clearly what you're doing is not enough, because scientists, even though they go to jail, still go on and do these research.
What we are doing is not enough. Let's have harsher penalties, let's have harsher checks, let's have harsher laws, because of the fact that they agree then. They said that it is not enough that laws, yes, are the answer, but are not enough. Okay, let's make the answer even much more bigger. Let's make the answer work by far more efficient. And by saying that the government today admitted the fact that we have a problem with these illegal things and we are solving these illegal things, and yes, the answer may be making these checks and these penalties more harsher. And exactly this is the answer. They admitted that we have a problem, and this problem are the illegal things, and we are dealing with them and still keeping and preserving human lives and the utilitarian perspective. No, thank you. Moving on to the legitimacy point, which is from the government today. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what we are saying is the fact that they are not going to make even more money, they are not going to be famous, and they are not going to act for the greater good because of the fact that they are going to be punished. And even if all this cannot stand up to this particular moment, we are saying that the image of that particular person is jeopardized and it is harmed. And basically, when it is jeopardized and it is harmed, we are sending a clear message to the society that what that particular person done is not okay and it is not legal and should not happen again. So basically, not only that we are dealing with the real problem, but we are also solving the precedent, and we are also solving another atrocities, and we are making sure that another atrocity won't happen. Now what is more, they told us that we are actually diminishing the risk. But there are two main issues to be taken into account, two main ways of dealing with the problem. On the one hand, acting at its very core, as we propose, making harsher penalties and dealing directly with the roots of the problem, and on the other hand, trying to diminish its negative impact upon the society. And if some people died in there, we are diminishing the negative impact by letting other people live, and by giving the answer to other questions that are very important to our society, and questions that have not been answered till now. No, thank you, sir. Now moving on to the substantive of the opposition today. What we pretty much said was the fact that we are preserving the utility, otherwise we are taking a step backward. Why we are taking a step backward? Because these things constitute a real core within worldwide medical issues. This means that once we are extracting them from the usage, from the present usage, this means that some present questions cannot be anymore solved, and this would lead to even more atrocities, and this would lead to the worsened problem, exactly the thing that should be solved by the state government today. And also we are saying, ladies and gentlemen, that ethics create reaction, and we are saying that when something really harms the society, that particular society is going to vote those people able to have the power to make those things that already harm the society laws, and thus to punish them. And exactly this is the whole point of the opposition today. We are having a reaction, and we are voting people that are able to implement our reaction in the parliament, and thus to solve that particular problem. We've also heard from the government today that we are solving with that we may solve all these things by the technology. One question to be posed till now, ladies and gentlemen, why do we still have this happening? Why do we still have all these unethical experiments considered by some unethical happening in our present society? 1 second, sir. We are doing this because technology till now is not actually able to deal with all these things. They cannot recreate, and they cannot actually take 100% the human body and the real human mechanism into account. Do go on.
Yes, but we are allowed to test on humans under certain circumstances. Batian told you quite clearly that we only do this when we want a rush job of it.
Well, yes. As you have heard, because this is, you are changing somehow the line of your team. At the very beginning you said that human testing is not allowed, and human testing is allowed, and so on. What we are saying is the fact that human testing, when it is illegal, it is punished. Now moving on to my own part of the substantive, social judgment. Basically, here I will prove to you 2 main points. Let the society know, and the second point would be sanction the behavior. So basically, even if principially you have the idea that the society's ethics are breached by these practices, you should not label them by any boards of 6 or 7 people that may consider them unethical, but give the real lesson to the society. And the society have to know. And what we propose is that every pharmaceutical company will be obliged to have on its side the information of how that particular medicine was obtained, what exactly were the steps. So basically we are sending this real message to the society, and if the society is interested, the society will take the advantage of that particular document, because it really expresses and it really shows how that particular medicine was obtained. And second point, sanction the behavior. This will result in people being able to react to what they find inappropriate, to sanction this behavior, to push for the ways in which they believe the issue should be addressed. And this is how ethics can function, and it must remain on a social mechanism. And because of the fact that we have laws dealing with these illegalities, and because of the fact that ethics cannot function as the government proposed that, and because of the fact that ethics totally differ and do not have an objective core, I beg you to oppose the resolution.
Thank you very much. I now call upon the third speaker of Israel.
If we were to take Team Romania's case in point and really understand what they're trying to tell us, then we would see that if a certain cop, it was alright with his ethics to talk to this guy in order to get information that would save lives, that would be alright. Because, you know, ethics are subjective, ladies and gentlemen. If, on the other hand, someone also, you know, would think that it would be alright to go and steal from that person, because, you know, I don't have very much money, and he has a lot of it, it would be alright to do that, and we should have no law against it. The thing that they are failing to understand here is, first of all, we never really understood what the difference between ethics and actual laws are, because any law that you pass has some ethical backing behind it, and there are some laws which are purely ethical laws, such as ethical medical practices, or laws against, say, you buying or selling human organs. There are many different ethical laws that we have out there, and we failed to hear really any kind of analysis on what the difference between ethics and laws are, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm going to ask you really 3 questions. First is, can we gain from unethical practices? The second is, do we know what ethics actually are? And finally, how do we deal with the problem of the fact that African nations, that the developing world is being used as the first world guinea pig? So, ladies and gentlemen, before I do that, no thank you, let me just clarify something that seems to be misunderstood by Team Romania. Under today's status quo, and Matan said this really quite clearly, you are allowed to do tests on humans. You have to have consent, they have to make a free rational choice, you have to basically know that the drug isn't going to kill them. What we're saying, ladies and gentlemen, is that you can still use these kind. What we don't allow you to do is take people from their homes and inject them with AIDS to see what kind of reaction they're going to have. But no thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, what we see here is that you can, all these practices we can get, and Buck's going to explain quite clearly why we can get them today. Some people just want to do a rush job of it. Some people want to make money that much quicker. So, ladies and gentlemen, can we gain from unethical practices? No, thank you. They said, we're saving lives so we can. We're taking the utilitarian approach. Ladies and gentlemen, Matan got up here in his very first speech and said, utilitarian approach is not applicable in any democracy anywhere in the world. You are not allowed, just because you are saving more lives, to harm people. You are not allowed to take organs from people, no thank you, even if they're on their deathbed, in order to give it to lots of people. You are not allowed to go into someone's home without a warrant, even if you very well suspect that they have drugs there, and you can arrest them. And you are not allowed to torture criminals. And we showed you, ladies and gentlemen, that in all these examples, and the British High Court itself said, we will not allow the use of torture to be justified. We will not allow this utilitarian approach to apply. 1 second, sir. Utilitarian approach doesn't apply in any other case. We need to hear some analysis from their side on why it applies in this case here.
Yeah, answer to what you have said, or what you have already said, you get punished, and if you are not enough punished, you get even more punished.
Thank you. Sorry, thank you very much, sir. But what we see here, ladies, is what I'm going to get to in a minute on how do we deal with this problem. They say they get punished. Ladies and gentlemen, if you get caught after you killed people, then you get sent to jail for murder. If you get caught after you've murdered someone, then you get sent if you got tortured someone, then you get sent to jail for torture. These are pretty harsh penalties. And what we have to see here is that while these things are still illegal, they're still being done in society today. They're still being done a lot in society today. The biggest cosmetic companies in the world are over in India conducting these unethical experiments.
Sir.
Clearly, no thank you, harsher penalties doesn't really work. So, ladies and gentlemen, we see, quite frankly, that we're not allowed to gain from unethical practices in this case, just like we're not allowed to gain from unethical practices in any other way. And the fact is, Buck's said quite clearly, and they never really came to grips with it, the fact is, we can get these same results. We can save these same people. It might take us more time. We might have to do the niceties of actually, no thank you, asking people before we inject them, or, not conducting experiments on babies. But, ladies and gentlemen, when we actually have the product, we won't be legitimizing the actual use of these unethical, disgusting, despicable practices.
Sir.
And more than that, no thank you, sir, we will not be encouraging their continual use. Because under today's status quo, and again, they haven't come to grips with it, there is still encouragement for people to continue this. The African nations, the developing world, is still put in a terrible situation by the first. So, ladies and gentlemen, do we know what ethics are? Well, ethics are different, is what we heard. But ladies and gentlemen, laws are different in many different countries. In Amsterdam, it's legal for me to go and buy marijuana. If I was to do this in Israel, I might get in quite a bit of trouble. There are different corporate laws in different countries. The fact that there are discrepancies between laws in various countries doesn't mean that we don't have any laws, ladies and gentlemen. Yes.
Still, is it okay for me to go to the Netherlands, smoke marijuana, and then come back and I'm perfectly okay and I never did anything wrong?
Okay, thank you. But here's the problem that we have here, ladies and gentlemen. When you go somewhere and I use this product and I go and I torture people and I go use these unethical means, then no, I'm not allowed to gain from it. I'm not allowed to gain any money from an illegal practice that I undertake. No, thank you, sir. I'm not allowed to gain from my unethical practices. What they're proposing is that we'll have all the first world companies move to the third world to conduct their practices. They'll do them all there, because then, they're not doing anything illegal in their own country, and then they can come back,
Sir.
no thank you, and gain millions from their product. We don't think this is acceptable. We don't think that the third world should become the guinea pig of the first world, ladies and gentlemen. So what we really see here is that we don't do away with laws that are different, and that there are different ethical laws and different laws among different populations. And what we told you quite clearly is that 78% of the world agrees that we're not going to allow the use of torture, ladies and gentlemen, even if it were to save lives. And we say, where is the difference here? We're not going to allow the use of unethical unethical means, which is, at the end of the day, some form of torture, in order to save lives. We needed to hear a different. 78% of the world reacted to these unethical tortures and said, no, we don't agree with this, ladies and gentlemen, and we are a democracy. We do respect minority opinion, but we don't allow them, when they are going to continue to harm others, to continue to allow to make the choice to do unethical things. So, ladies and gentlemen, finally, to sum this all up, how do we deal with this problem? Because they admitted, ladies and gentlemen, that there is a very, very harsh problem in the world today. They admitted that the developing world has had experiments conducted on it, and that we need to deal with this problem. And quite frankly, if we want to save lives, how about we start saving the lives around today, ladies and gentlemen? How about we start saving the lives of the people who are being tortured today, or the people who are having experiments conducted upon them today? If we really want to save people, let's save the people we tangibly know we actually can. But then, ladies and gentlemen, they said, well, that's fine, we'll just have harsher penalties. Harsher penalties is not a solution, ladies and gentlemen. This has been their entire team line throughout their entire case. We will just put down harsher penalties. The penalties for conducting torture, the penalties for murdering people are harsh enough. And even if we make them even harsher, we said, quite frankly, the fame, which is the motive of a lot of people in the scientific research, to get their name out. A lot of people who are actually quite unbalanced, but still have the means to do this. We said to help the world, because there are a lot of people out there, they think that by doing this they're helping the world, and if, a few babies die along the way, well, that's okay. It's for the greater good. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, money. Because here's the thing, the companies that are working in India, they're not like the actual companies themselves. They're people that are being hired by the big pharmaceutical companies, and then they're just profiting from the atrocities that they're doing. So we cannot allow ourselves to gain from unethical practices. We can't legitimize it, we can't encourage it. We can tell you what ethics are, we can have ethical laws, and we deal with this problem by taking away any incentive. Harsh penalties don't cut it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I now call on the third speaker from Romania.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mihai, the third opposition. And first of all, let's clarify a few things. And first of all, I will begin with clarifying the nature of ethics and laws. What are we talking about? What are ethics? How they act? What are laws? How do they act? How do they help us? Second of all, I will talk about utility, how it is important, how important it is. And third of all, about the options we have at the end of this debate. Now, first of all, nature of ethics and laws, and here we're talking pretty much about definitions and what we're debating upon. Ethics, ladies and gentlemen, are something that people or groups of people have, are moral values that these people share, that give them common ground. We heard that, yes, we have ethical medical practices, and those would be legalized in some way. Ladies and gentlemen, those are practices that are shared by all the doctors, that they use and support exactly our definition of ethics. Exactly what they support. It's not exactly a law. Those are rules set by the doctors for their community itself. So thank you, sir. Now, and anyhow, when talking about this, we also have things that are ethical but not legalized, but not put into law. Like fair trade, for example. Fair trade is ethical. We can't buy prices from certain countries at bigger prices than we could normally, but that doesn't mean that we should have a law banning that or simply prohibiting not doing that. It doesn't simply mean that. No, thank you, sir. And on the point of stealing, killing, and things like that, well, criterions are different for ethics and for laws. Let's get this straight. Ethics work in the following way. They cause people to react. They cause reaction because those moral standards would be breached. And at that moment in time, people will take action. Will take action. And the criterion for laws is social harm. If a social harm exists, then no, thank you. Then we have a law. But and here we distinguish three major situations. Please.
We have a social harm. We're compromising our morals. This is why we need a law to protect our ethics.
Thank you, madam. And I will detail this right away. But first of all, the thing with the laws, well, there is social harm, and we put things into law in order to provide society with the with the safety mechanism. But what ethics are is our social mechanism, and we have to respect that. And what the proposition is telling us is that we should impose things, and impose things decided by who? Well, those could be boards of ethics or things like that, but what we heard in the example provided by them is that the people, 78% of people, would like to have something banned. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we think, no, thank you, sir, would like to bring some legislators that would promote certain laws and that would make things illegal.
Sir.
Because, no, thank you, because we're distinguishing three major situations. If something is illegal, then that is illegal. That is just illegal. And the concept why we should make something illegal does not fit. We don't have an objective basis, and we shouldn't. Certain ethics can't be put into laws because the criterion is different. No, thank you, sir. If at a certain moment in time social harm exists, then we should make it a law. And here we're looking at the second situation in which things are illegal, things are legal but grievous. But then the opposition is telling you, by all means, make it illegal. Have harsh penalties, because when you have harsh and harsher and harsher and harsher penalties, more and more people, less and less people, will be likely to take that risk. Make that risk not worthy. No, thank you, madam. And the third point would be, well, it's legal, and some people may think it's unethical by their standards. What we suggest is that those people make their own judgment, because those people have to indeed have the right to choose to see and observe and punish the ones who breach their moral standards. But what happens is that we can't put that into law just because 1, 2, or 3, you and me, think something. Please, sir.
Okay, but what if the Helsinki report, signed by basically all the democratic governments in the world, said, we think that these things are not right and we shouldn't use them? Wouldn't that fall under the criteria of all doctors?
Thank you, sir. Pretty much this is the argument brought by the proposition, that of Helsinki and so on. Well, those things, the things that are stipulated there, are illegal. Those are illegal and atrocious practices. And just like that, they are illegal because we can't afford that particular social harm. Now, moving on to the second point, that of utility. And here we get a simple question. When something happens, because things may still happen anyhow, when something happens, what do we do then? Well, and the thing is, the real question is, are we keeping that information? Do we try to take advantage of it since we still have it? Because the event happened anyhow? And the answer is yes, because we can help society and we have the duty to help society. And of course, we can publish the thing, and I will detail this in the alternatives, in the options point. We will detail this, and it is very important that people understand and make their judgments about things. But it's also very important to help people. The AZT treatment, the streptokinesis example, they all prove how this information is vital for society and how we should use it. Because in itself, the problem is not the data. The problem is not the data. The problem is the way we got it in. The way we got it and the places we got it from, well, simply that is what the opposition is telling you. That should be a problem and we should do something about that, but not punish, not sanction. We should sanction the act itself, not the result, as most of all the result can have a very high potential of helping societies. Please, sir.
Okay, but here's the thing. What this whole debate is about is like whether or not we can use these things which are illegal, and we've said to you time and time again that we're not allowed to benefit from things that are illegal.
Sir, on the point of incentives, pretty much, this is what it's about. Well, they kept on telling us that scientists would still have certain incentives. As mentioned, you don't have fame, you don't have money when you're in jail, when you spend a lot of time in jail. And many other penalties can be thought of, like taking their money and many other things. They also said they simply assume that the medicine they may discover somehow will be named after them. No one says that. We can have certain penalties that take almost any incentive that they have. As for the greater good may be proven, but it doesn't matter that it doesn't occur to anyone that people will do, and any sane man will take a risk that is not worth it anyhow. Now, moving on to the point of options. At the end of the day, here we're looking at two worlds. Because we can choose to simply ban an output of an action without any reason and ignore how societies and ethics and what matters to people work. And we have the other option, that of the opposition, to try to sanction the act itself, to try to sanction the problem itself, because what the actual problem is that some people may be abused. But anyhow, if somewhere is legally valid content, and there may be a contract and other things like that, then it's perfectly okay. Just because you and I may think that someone was paid less or some things like that doesn't make it unethical. And that is the point. We don't have objective standards. We don't have objective standards. That's not how ethics work. Ethics are a social mechanism. People should judge for themselves because we would put the information available to everyone and they would be able to sanction directly the companies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go on ahead. Thank you very much. I'd now like to call upon the reply speaker from Romania.
Thank you. Now, let's just see how we sum up this debate, right? So, I'm going to ask some questions, basically 4 of them, so that I make it very clearly to each and every one of you what's happening. First of all, what are we talking about? What are unethical things? Well, from the definition, it seems they are illegal things. So bearing this in mind, we go to the next question. Do we have a problem? It seems both teams agree, yes, we have a problem. Horrible, horrible things being made, like torture, like experiments without consent. And those things are illegal. So the problem is that we have illegal things still happening. So the question at the end of the day, finally the third question, was, not finally, but good, how do we solve that problem? And each team came up with different responses. We heard from the proposition, we cut the result, we basically cut the leaves off, so that these scientists will no longer want fame and money while they're in prison, and we can get that step backwards. We can get that result that we want a lot slower, and we can't get it that fast. What have we heard? We've heard that we want, from the opposition, that we want harsh penalties. And what happens when we make harsher penalties? The risk is too much for the people. It is no longer worth it to make the experiment. So people don't make that harm to society, because that's what harms society. Torture harms the people, not the information. Information helps it. And actually, our measure, harsher penalties, actually says, okay, you've done something wrong, you're gonna get so sanctioned about it, but we still use the information because it's very important to us, because we have things to learn with it. Like the AZT, we want to help children not receive HIV from their mothers. We want to help patients with heart attacks, die of heart attacks a lot less. We want to help these people. Why take the information away when there's already been a harm, this illegality, thusly harm done? So these are the results. Fourth question. Is it, even if we accept this whole standard of morality, although we've already told you it's about things that are legal or not, is it moral? And even at this point, even if the all does not stand, the idea is that our proposition of letting society decide for themselves, that putting all the information somewhere where society can access it and think for themselves and use the ethics that are personal for them, and use it wisely. Because if 78% of the people think that you should not use I don't know what kind of medicine made in an I don't know what kind of illegal way, it seems, then those people will not use it. And it's very simple. Those people don't use it. And thus, we have social justice. If I don't have that ethic, and I have other ethics, and I think these are ethical medicine, then I will use it. Point made. We actually solve every single problem. So at the end of the day, do we really, really want to ban the result? Well, no. Why? because it doesn't harm society. It's not the result that harms society. Actually, the result brings actually quite a benefit to society. It's the action that harms it. So we want to make harsher penalties, not ban the result. Do we want to ban the result? No, because we want people to learn about it and decide for themselves if they think it's ethical or if not. We want to ban the result? No, because we want society to thrive from every single mistake that we have and learn every single thing that it can do to help itself. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I now call upon the reply speaker from Israel.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be here again today. I've been able to narrow this debate down to 4 questions. First of all, what exactly are ethics? Second of all, does human life really come before everything else? Thirdly, can we really detach a product from its producer? And fourthly, is the deterrence that the opposition proposed to us today enough? So let's start off with the first question, what are ethics? This is an issue that we really didn't expect to talk about, seeing as it's off clash. It's already a given that these experiments are unethical. But let's ignore that for a second. The opposition claim that ethics are relative. So does that mean that if I decide that I want to steal, that's something very ethical to do? Basically what they proposed before us today is anarchy. But let's say, again, that we agree with their claim. We agreed unethical as the lowest common denominator. We took 2 documents that are agreed upon as defining what ethical is by all of the world, and we really don't see a problem in that field. So let's move to the second question. Does human life come before all? The opposition does believe, so I quote the third speaker, we agree with the utilitarian approach. It's pretty straightforward. So is each member of the opposition really willing to jump into a fire in order to save the 3 of us Team Israel proposition? I doubt it. We asked them to analyze why 78% of the people in the world and why all of the democratic governments in the world do not accept the utilitarian approach. And frankly, ladies and gentlemen, we're still here waiting. Now, moreover, what they had was really a simplistic approach. They said that this is all about the right to life. And I have 2 answers to that. First of all, most of these experiments aren't just right to life. They're not all producing a miraculous pill. Some of them are just finding something out and not just saving right to life. But let's say that they are indeed preserving right to life. The right to life. Batzion showed us very clearly that this debate isn't about saving lives or not saving lives. It's about saving lives now and compromising all of our moral standards, or saving lives a bit later while not compromising any of our morals and our values. Now to the third question, a very important question in this debate. Can we detach a product from the producer? The opposition concedes that unethical experiments are bad. They said we want to ban them, and they said that they don't like them, frankly. So all we have to show is that there is a connection, and we did that very elaborately in my first speech when we gave a very elaborate analysis on how you cannot buy a product without in fact endorsing how you got it. And the opposition once again had absolutely nothing to say about that analysis. They did not show us why what we said today is wrong, and they did not do their job as the opposition. Now, the fourth and final question, is the deterrence they gave enough? They said we're going to punish them more. And I didn't really understand what they were talking about. Are they going to throw them even more into jail? Are they going to throw them into ultra jail? I mean, what are they really talking about? But let's say that I did understand. They conceded the motives for which scientists do go forth and do unethical experiments. They agreed that it's for the money, for the fame, and for the greater good. Now, for money, they just said, you can't use your money once you're in jail. Well, that's factually wrong. You get out of jail one time and you can use the money. So there goes that point. And then they said the whole fame thing about how you cannot be famous once you're in jail. I know plenty of people that were really famous. I don't know, Nelson Mandela. They were incredibly famous while they were in jail. So that, so really, they haven't deterred that motive either. And then, when we got to the greater good, the third speaker just said, oh yeah, our plan doesn't solve that problem at all. So we see that really their plan does not deter any scientists from holding unethical experiments. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg you to propose this motion.
Thank you very much, everyone. Obviously, we're we're going to take a few minutes to come to our decision. Feel free to either listen in to the debates taking place or talk amongst yourselves quietly.
I actually kept.
No, hold on, guys. Stay talking quietly.